Hi, I'm Laura Taylor. It's the fourth night of Hanukkah, and everyone seems to be cooking brisket and latkes for their holiday celebrations. I hear so many people say, though, that every time they make a brisket, it's tough or it's tasteless, and what do? So I decided I'm going to get on my video camera and show you how I make my brisket. It comes out delicious and tender every time. Now, every family has a recipe, and there are more recipes to make briskets than you could ever imagine. Some are made with onion soup mix, some are made with grape jam, some are with molasses. There are even recipes to make brisket with beer. I do none of those things. I'm going to show you today the way my mom and my grandma made it. So let's start with the brisket itself, what kind of beef you should get. I'm going to show you my brisket right here. You will notice that one side of it has a layer of fat. That is essential for a delicious brisket. You want to get a flat cut brisket or the whole brisket from your butcher, and you definitely want it to be untrimmed. This is one of those times where you want to cook the meat with the fat on it and then either cut it all off before serving it or do it the old-fashioned way and let the person who's eating the brisket know to cut the fat off their meat. We're going to start by cutting 2 onions. They are peeled, and we're going to cut them in half and then into wedges. Most of this onion is going to go underneath the brisket to flavor it, and a little bit will be saved to go on top. I am not being careful about counting my wedges, nor am I being careful to make them the same size. Just do a little bit more here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is put the majority of this onion, leaving about, I'd say 4 wedges remaining, in the bottom of the pan. I'm just throwing it in. Now you see right now at this moment it's on top of the brisket, but that's about to change. So I'm setting aside my few wedges to go on top of the brisket. The rest goes into the pan, and we're going to season the brisket. There we go. Now the onions are underneath the meat. We're going to season the brisket the lean side up first. The way we season both sides is exactly the same. You have to generously season a brisket. Okay? We're going to start with plain old table salt. There's nothing fancy with seasoning brisket. So we have to generously season the brisket on both sides. The seasoning is exactly the same. We're not using any fancy ingredients here. We're using table salt, and we're using Lowry seasoned salt. You can see I'm putting a lot on. This is a very thick piece of meat. It's going to cook for a long time in a lot of water, so this salt is not all going to remain on the meat. We need some black pepper. I don't happen to love a lot of black pepper, so I'm not quite so generous with it, but I want it to be evenly distributed. Then we'll use some garlic powder. This is not garlic salt, remember, it's garlic powder. Then we're going to take some Worcestershire sauce. Be sure to shake it before you use it. Worcestershire sauce goes on the brisket, and then I use my pastry brush to brush it on and brush it around. And again, that kind of redistributes all the seasonings you put on so far. As long as it's there, it doesn't matter, don't worry. You really can't mess this up. This has a really thick end, so I want to get some seasoning there too. Okay, after I've really distributed the Worcestershire sauce well, we're actually going to put, believe it or not, more of the Lowry salt. Brisket is not a real flavorful piece of meat on its own. We have to do a lot to make it be that way. Okay. Then let's finish that side off with some paprika. It gives it a nice color. And it does add a little bit of a flavor to it too. Okay, now I'm going to turn this messy guy over, leaving the onions in the bottom of the pan, and we do the exact same thing again. So we turn the brisket over so we can now season the fat side. We're going to season it exactly the same way as we did the bottom, but this would also be a really good time to go turn your oven on. I've turned it on to 325 degrees. Let that preheat while we finish up. So, season this side. Again, we've got salt, pepper, Lawry seasoned salt, some garlic powder, Worcestershire sauce spread out and brushed on. I've gone back and added more Lawry seasoned salt and then paprika on top. On this side, we're going to add 1 bay leaf at the very middle of the brisket, and then those reserved pieces of onion will go on the corners of the meat. It's just going to help season it a bit more. Actually, this is the thicker part, so I think I'm going to put my biggest chunk of onion there. And one of my pieces split in two, no problem, I'll just stick it in the center. You almost can't have too much. Lastly, we need to take plain old water from the sink and pour it around the sides of the brisket, not on top. We want it to go on the sides, and we need the water to go a good halfway up the fattest, thickest side of the meat. So I'm going to add some more. Now this side of the brisket is very, very thick. I need the water there because the slow cooking in the water at the low temperature is what's going to make this nice and tender. So parts of the brisket will be almost submerged. It's okay. It's going to be absolutely delicious. I'm even going to add a tiny bit more. There we go. All right, we put the lid on the brisket. If your roasting pan doesn't have a lid made for it, use heavy-duty aluminum foil and make a very tight lid on this. You want it to seal really, really well. We need all that moisture that you just put in this pan to remain cooking the brisket and to not escape. So that's why you either need the great lid that comes with the roasting pan or to make a nice tight lid with the foil. We're going to take this and put it in the oven. It's going to cook for exactly 4 hours. It doesn't matter if you've got a 2-pound brisket or a 7-pound brisket like I do today. Cook it for 4 hours. You will know it's done when you take a long tine fork, stick it into the thickest part of the brisket. It should go in nice and easily. If it does, it's done. And I have yet to have a brisket cook under 4 hours, and I have yet to have one cook in more than 4 hours. I'm Laura Taylor. I wish you a happy Hanukkah, and I wish you happy brisket. I'm Laura Taylor. I wish you a happy Hanukkah and a delicious brisket.